Hello, welcome to Tuesday afternoon's Poetry, Prose and a Cup of Tea with me, Basil, from Trowbridge Library. We've had a few tech problems, which is why I'm a little bit late, but I hope you all can see me now. Just going to wait a little bit just in case. Hello, welcome to Tuesday afternoon's Poetry, Prose and a Cup of Tea with me, Basil, from Trowbridge Library. It's a Tuesday afternoon thing we do every week. Have a cup of tea, have a chat, read some poems. I'll read some prose as well in a minute. Okay, what I thought I'd do is, today's theme is all about animals, by the way. What I thought I would do is start off with a little poem that one of my colleagues wrote, with Katie wrote, okay? Just a little funny rhyme, which is quite a nice way to start off with. Poetry, prose and a cup of tea. That sounds like pure joy to me. Why not join us here at 3? Oh, how lovely it will be. And that's from my good friend KT, which also rhymes as well. All right, so today I'm going to do some poetry and prose on the theme of animals. I was browsing through some of my books that I've got a pile of here, and I started just looking through and see what was there. But one of my favourites, which is in this first book in the Oxford Library of English Poetry, Volume 2, it's a famous poem that I'm sure a lot of you will know and like as well. It's called The Tiger, Tyger, The Tiger, by William Blake. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize the fire? And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? What the hammer, what the chain? In what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil, what dread glass dare its deadly terrors clasp? And when the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he, who made the lamb, make thee? Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry? That's William Blake's poem on the tiger. William Blake obviously was a poet from a very long time ago, 1757 to 1827. Okay, and I hope you like that one as a good starter. Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright by William Blake. Right, I'm going to pour out my cup of tea. You know what I did today? I've got my cup and saucer out today, and I've got my milk, and I've got my teapot, okay? And so I'm going to pour myself out a cup of tea now. Milk first or milk after? My mum always says milk after. I'm a little bit rebellious. Put the milk in first. I think it's to do with you use tea bags or loose tea. This is just a tea bag in my teapot here, okay? Nice cup of tea. There we go. Well, I'll have a little bit of that in a minute as well when it cools down. Okay, so I said I'm going to do poetry and prose today. Now, last time I did this, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I talked about this book, which is called A Little Aloud. And it's got a lot of extracts from books and poems that to read aloud to a group. And I use it quite a lot when I go out and do group talks around the place. What I'm going to do is read one of those short extracts now. Now, this isn't a story about the summer. It's a story about the winter. But to be honest, today I'm rather hot. I'm in my short sleeve shirt and I'm still rather hot. So I'm going to read this story. It's about winter in Alaska. And it's got an animal called Buck. Okay. It's an extract from The Call of the Wild by Jack London. And make yourself comfortable. Get your cup of tea out because this it tells me it takes about 11 minutes to read this extract. Okay. I hope you enjoy it and just Sit and let the words go over you, okay? And imagine yourself maybe in the Alaskan gold rush. The story is set in Alaska at the time of the Klondike Gold Rush. Buck is a cross between a St. Bernard and a Scottish sheepdog. He has been stolen from his home in California and sold to Alaska to be trained as a sledge dog. Life is tough and brutal, and Buck endures much cruelty and danger in the hands of his bad owners. But in this extract, he is owned by a good master, John Thornton, to whom he is devoted. That winter, at Dawson, Buck performed another exploit, not so heroic perhaps, but one that put his name many notches higher on the totem pole of Alaskan fame. This exploit was particularly gratifying to the three men, for they stood in need of the outfit which it furnished, and were able to make a long-desired trip into the Virgin East where the miners had not yet appeared. It was brought about by a conversation at their El Dorado saloon, in which men waxed boastful of their favourite dogs. Buck, because of his record, was the target for these men, and Thornton was driven stoutly to defend him. At the end of half an hour, one man stated that his dog could start a sled with 500 pounds and walk off with it. A second bragged 600 for his dog, and a third 700. Phew, said John Thornton. Buck can start £1,000. And break it? And walk off with it for 100 yards, demanded Mathewson, a bonanza king, he of the 700 vaunt. And break out of it and walk off with it for 100 yards, said John Thornton coolly. Well, said Mathewson slowly and deliberately, so that all could hear, I've got $1,000 that says he can't, and there it is. And so saying, he slammed $1,000 in a sack of gold dust the size of a bologna sausage down on the bar. Nobody spoke. Thornton's bluff, if bluff it was called. He could feel a flush of warm blood creeping up into his face, and his tongue had tricked him. He did not know whether Buck could start £1,000. He did not know whether, half a ton. The enormousness of it appalled him. He had great faith in Buck's strength and had often thought him capable of starting such a load, but never, as now, had he faced the possibility of it. The eyes of a dozen men fixed upon him, silent and waiting. And further, he had no $1,000, nor had Hans, nor Pete. I've got a sled standing outside with 20 50-pound sacks of flour on it, Mathewson went on with brutal directness. So don't let that hinder you. Thornton did not reply. He did not know what to say. He glanced from face to face in the absent way of a man who has been lost the power of thought and is seeking somewhere to find the thing that will get it going again. The face of Jim O'Brien, a mastodon king and an old-time comrade, caught his eye. It was a cue to him. It seemed to rouse him to do what he would never have dreamed of doing. Can you lend me 1,000? he asked, almost in a whisper. Sure, answered O'Brien, thumping down a plethoric sack by the side of Mathewson's. Though it's little faith I'm having, John, that the beast can do the trick. The El Dorado emptied its occupants into the street to see the test. The tables were deserted, and the dealers and gamekeepers came forth to see the outcome of the wager and to lay odds. Several hundred men, furred and mittened, banked around the sled within easy distance. Mathewson's sled, loaded with 1,000 pounds of flour, had been standing for a couple of hours, and the intense cold, 60 below zero, the runners had frozen fast to the hard, packed snow. Men offered odds of 2 to 1 that Buck could not budge the sled. A quibble arose concerning the frame's break out. O'Brien contended it was Thornton's privilege to knock the runners loose, leaving Buck to break it out from a dead standstill. Mathewson insisted the phrase included breaking the runners from the frozen grip of the snow. A majority of the men who had witnessed the making of the bet decided in his favour, whereat the odds went up to 3 to 1 against Buck. 3 to 1. But no takers. No takers. Not a man believed him capable of the feat. Thornton had been hurried into the wager, heavy with doubt, and now that he looked at the sled itself, the concrete fact with regular teams of 10 dogs curled up in the snow before it, the more impossible the task appeared. Matthewson waxed jubilant. 3 to 1, he proclaimed. I'll lay you another 1,000 at the figure, Thornton. What do you say? Thornton's doubt was strong in his face, but his fighting spirit was aroused. The fighting spirit that soars above odds, fails to recognise the impossible, and is deaf to all save the clamour for battle. He called Hans and Pete to him. Their sacks were slim, and with his own 3 partners they could rake together only $200. In the ebb of their fortunes, this sum was their total capital. Yet they laid it unhesitatingly against Matthewson's 600. The team of 10 dogs was unhitched, and Buck, with his own harness, was put into the sled. He had caught the contagion of the excitement, and he felt that in some way he must do a great thing for John Thornton. Murmurs of admiration at his splendid appearance went up. He was in perfect condition, without an ounce of superfluous flesh, and the 150 pounds that he weighed were so many pounds of grit and virility. His furry coat shone with the sheen of silk, and down his neck and across the shoulders his mane, in repose as it was, half bristled and seemed to lift with every movement, as though excess of vigour made each particular hair alive and active. The great breast and the heavy forelegs were no more than in proportion with the rest of his body, where the muscles showed in tight rolls underneath the skin. Men felt these muscles and proclaimed them as hard as iron, and the odds went back down to 2 to 1. Gadser, stuttered a member of the latest dynasty, a king of the Skookum benches. I offer you 800 for him, sir, before the test. 800, just as he stands. Thornton shook his head and stepped to Buck's side. You must stand off him, Matthewson protested. Free play and plenty of room. The crowd fell silent. Only could be heard the voices of the gamblers vainly offering 2 to 1, 2 to 1. Everyone acknowledged Buck a magnificent animal, but 20 £50 sacks of flour bulked too large in their eyes for them to loosen their pouch strings. Thornton knelt down by Buck's side. He took his head in his 2 hands and rested cheek on cheek. He did not playfully shake him, as was his wont, or murmur soft love curses, but he whispered in his ear, "As you love me, Buck, as you love me," was what he whispered. Buck whined with suppressed eagerness. The crowd was watching curiously. The affair was growing mysterious. It seemed like a conjuration. As Thornton got to his feet, Buck seized his mittened hand between his jaws, pressing it in with his teeth, and releasing it slowly, half reluctantly. It was the answer in terms not of speech but of love, and Thornton stepped well back. "Now, Buck," he said. Buck tightened the traces, then slackened them for a matter of several inches. It was the way he'd learnt. "Gee!" Thornton's voice rang out sharp in the tense silence. Buck swung to the right, ending the movement in a plunge that took up the slack and with a sudden jerk arrested his 150 pounds. The load quivered, and from under the runners arose a crisp crackling. "Haw!" Thornton commanded. Buck duplicated the manoeuvre, this time to the left. The crackling turned to a snapping and the sled pivoting, and the runners slipping and grating several inches to the side. The sled was broken out. Men were holding their breaths, intensely unconscious of the fact. "Now, mush!" Thornton's commands cracked out like a pistol shot. Buck threw himself forward, tightening the traces with a jarring lunge. His whole body was gathered compactly together in the tremendous effort, the muscles writhing and knotting like live things under the silky fur. His great chest was low to the ground, his head forward and down, while his feet were flying like mad, the claws scarring the hard-packed snow in parallel grooves. The sled swayed and trembled and half started forwards. One of the feet slipped, and one man groaned aloud. Then the sled lurched ahead in what appeared to be a rapid succession of jerks, but never came to a dead stop again. Half an inch, 2 inches. The jerks perceptibly diminished as the sled gained momentum, and he caught them up till it was moving steadily along. Men gasped and began to breathe again, unaware that for a moment they had ceased to breathe. Thornton was running behind, encouraging Buck with short, cheery words. The distance measured off, and as he neared the pile of firewood which marked the end of the 100 yards, a cheer began to grow. Hooray, hooray, which burst into a roar as he passed the firewood and halted at the command. Every man was tearing himself loose, even Matthewson. Hats and mittens were flying in the air, men were shaking hands, it did not matter with whom, and the bubbling over in general, a coherent babel. But Thornton fell on his knees beside Buck, head against head, and he was shaking him back and forth. Those who hurried up heard him cursing Buck, as he cursed him long and fervently and softly and lovingly. "Gad, sir, gad, sir," spluttered the Skookum Bench King. "I'll give you 1,000 for him, sir. No, 1,000, sir. No, 1,200, sir." Thornton rose to his feet. His eyes were wet. The tears were streaming frankly down his cheeks. "Sir," he said to the Skookum Bench King. "No, sir, you can go to hell, sir. It's the best I can do for you, sir." And Buck seized Thornton's hand in his teeth. Thornton shook him back and forth, and as though animated by a common impulse, the onlookers drew back to a respectful distance, nor were they indiscreet enough again to interrupt. So that's Call of the Wild by Jack London, one chapter from that book about Buck breaking loose from the 1,000-pound sled as a result of a bet. I think it's really lovely. It's a very sort of masculine book. I think there's quite a lot in there. I love the murmuring soft love curses that Thornton gives to the pet as he's talking to him. A very lovely, moving story. Jack London being a great American writer at the turn of the 19th century, first made his fortune writing books, one of the first few writers to do so. Fantastic writer, worth catching a hold of that book as well, especially if you like the adventure stories. Right, well after that I am going to have my cup of tea. I poured it out, it'll have cooled down a bit now. So cheers to anyone else as well who's having a cup of tea, if cheers is the right thing. That's nice. I have got cake as well. You probably can't see it on the screen. So there's my cake. It was a Father's Day cake at the weekend. My boys made it for me. And that's a cappuccino bar with some chocolate icing on top. I'll have that later as well, I think. Okay, I'm going to change tack and do some shorter, sort of more silly poems now. Still about animals, different animals. This one is by Anon, that very prolific writer we've got. Anon, we don't know who wrote it. It's called The Frog. Only 6 lines long, this one. The frog. What a wonderful bird the frog are. When he sit, he stand almost. When he hop, he fly almost. He ain't got no sense hardly. He ain't got no tail hardly either. And when he sit on what he ain't got almost. Very short, silly one, that one. I hope you liked that one as well. Very different writer by Anon. Who wrote it? Who knows? 2 more poems by people we do know who wrote these ones, okay? One is quite a sweet one. It's a little bit moving and sort of gentle, this one. I think it's kind of a little bit wistful, a bit like Adelstrop, which I read last time, Edward Thomas. It's got a little bit of that going on with it as well, okay? Hi, Steph. I'm glad you like the look of the cake. I'll bring some to work when we get back in the library. Okay, thank you. Right, okay, I'm going to read this poem. It's called 4 Ducks on a Pond by William Allingham. And again, another little short one, which is quite nice. 4 ducks on a pond, a grass bank beyond, a blue sky of spring, white clouds on the wing. What a little thing to remember for years, to remember with tears. Tears of happiness, I think, or tears of wistfulness. That's how I see that. I think it's a lovely moment that happened, possibly with a loved one, possibly at a time of great peace in his life. I don't know. It's kind of, you can put your own interpretation on that. But certainly wistful and remembering for years later. A bit like the daffodils as well in Wordsworth's poem as well. He looks back in his mind's eye later and remembers. That kind of thing. Remembering these moments. Hopefully you've had some treasured moments you can remember recently as well as some odd moments I'm sure we'll remember this year for lots of reasons. Nice readings hopefully as well. Okay, so that's William Allingham, Four Ducks on a Pond. And then my final poem, I'm not going to keep you very, very long, and I've just pulled the bookmark out, so that's really annoying, isn't it? Because I can't find, well, here we go. Pull the bookmark out before I got it there. Okay, so now, I don't know if any of you have ever watched my rhyme time on a Friday morning, 11 o'clock, on the Facebook page. You're welcome to come along. I've got a son called Jim who plays the piano behind me over there and joins in. And this is a poem about Jim and a lion. It's not how my Jim is, partly because he never had a nurse, and partly because he's much better behaved. Okay, so this is called Jim, and it's by Hilaire Belloc. And it's Jim who ran away from his nurse and was eaten by a lion. You ready? There was a boy whose name was Jim. His friends were very good to him. They gave him tea, pancakes and jam, and delicious slices of ham, and chocolate with pink inside, and little tricycles to ride, and read him stories through and through, and even took him to the zoo. But there it was the dreadful fate befell him, which I now relate. You know, at least you ought to know, for I have often told you so, that children are never allowed to leave their nurses in a crowd. Now this was Jim's especial foible. He ran away when he was able, and on this inauspicious day he slipped his hand and ran away. He hadn't gone a yard when, bang, with open jaws, a lion sprang and hungrily began to eat the boy, beginning at his feet. Now, just imagine how it feels when first your toes and then your heels, your shins are eaten then by gradual degrees, and your shins and ankles, calves and knees are slowly eaten bit by bit. No wonder Jim detested it. No wonder that he shouted, "Hi!" The honest keeper heard his cry. Though very fat, he almost ran to help the little gentleman. "Ponto!" he ordered as he came, for Ponto was the lion's name. "Ponto!" he cried with angry frown. "Let go, sir! Down, sir! Put it down!" The lion made a sudden stop. He let the dainty morsel drop, and slunk reluctant to his cage, snarling with disappointed rage. But when he bent him over Jim, the honest keeper's eyes were dim. The lion having reached his head, the miserable boy was dead. When nurse informed his parents, they were more concerned than I can say. His mother, as she dries her eyes, says, "Well, it gives me no surprise. He would not do as he was told." His father, who was self-controlled, bade all the children round attend to James's miserable end, and always keep a hold of nurse, for fear of finding something worse. Okay, so children, if you go out with your nurse, don't let go of her hand, especially in crowded places. If you go out with your mum and dad, it's probably also a good thing. Hopefully you won't get eaten by a lion. But that's from Hilaire Belloc's Cautionary Verses, and this is also in the collection of the Oxford Library of English Poetry, from which I've read quite a few of the poems and stories today. I also used Seamus Heaney's Rattlebag as well, if you can see that. A great collection of the wild, the wonderful, the funny, the sad, great collection just to browse through. You just look on a random page and find poems you might know, you might not know, but it's a great thing to have, that one. And then the other one I used was the Little Aloud book, produced by the Reader organisation. Okay, well, I'm going to go and enjoy my cake. I'm going to enjoy my cake off screen, I think, because you don't want to see me eating cake. Okay, you might feel jealous, if nothing else. And I'm going to say goodbye to you, and everyone take care. So next Thursday, it's Phil again, Phil Tomes from Salisbury Library. He's also doing a book chat every other Sunday with Jane. So Phil and Jane do a book chat, talk about the latest books that are out there as well. Keep an eye out for that. We have quizzes every Thursday night, as well as lots of activities, stories and rhymes for children as well. Keep an eye out on our Facebook page, and lovely to see you. Take care to everyone, and goodbye.